Yeah, Frank. Breakfast for the brain. Special time, Trade to Black, presented by Flowhub. Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Friday morning, 11 a.m., like old times. Friday, 11 a.m. as we do the live stream. But all signs point to Virginia on Monday as the ALJ hearing gets underway. So, yeah, biggest moment, I would say, for the cannabis space. There's a lot of big things that have happened recently. But for all those big things to come to fruition, all eyes in Virginia come Monday. But today we're going to talk about some of the things. Terry Mendez is going to join us from Safe Harbor. Again, more feedback from Chicago. He spoke to a number of banks that were there, flirting with the idea, looking at cannabis. He's also looking at consolidation. A lot of questions, and these banks lean on companies like Safe Harbor that are involved in this space for well over a decade. As well, in segment 2, a lot of you reached out, saw some comments yesterday about just the trading patterns of Kim Rivers and Trulieve since the stock began trading on the New York Stock Exchange 2 weeks ago. So we'll look and break down the analysis of what she's been selling, as well as the share buyback and what that'll have implementation, obviously, on the stock as well, among other things. We'll also touch on Glasshouse that begins trading, as we said yesterday, next week on Tuesday, June the 30th. So some interesting conversations to have, some technical analysis with Andrew that I think a lot of people have some good takeaways. So let's get into it. Friday morning, AB, good to see you on, like I said, a Friday.
How's it going?
I'm good. A lot going on.
Yeah.
Recorded a bunch of Cannabis in 5 videos here this morning. Cracked at the crack of dawn and got a bunch of stuff done. The early bird gets the worm, but all that stuff I've got something going on about uplisting and the pressure that Trulieve and Glasshouse puts on the rest of the companies and how that's all structured. We'll look at Verano, we'll look at Cresco, we'll look at GTI, as well as some of the money that these individual companies will save if 280E is obviously eliminated and taken away. So I'll have all that stuff coming out on Saturday and Monday, and as well, great job on the newsletter this week. I did the weekly recap. So all eyes on Arlington come Monday. Can you believe we're finally here come Monday?
Yeah, it'll be nice to get started. I'll be more excited when it's finished.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's going to be 2 weeks of waiting.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have plenty of biased reporting from the guys over at SAM on a daily basis in regards to what the hearing is doing. So, I mean, I think a lot of the things that are going to be said, if you read some of the briefs that they've already filed, I mean, it's going to be jarring arguments that you think are going to look very bad within the court of law within this hearing. That's the point. They're supposed to bring very bad and egregious arguments to the table. It's the government's job to defend against those. It's the science and data, as we know, points to the contrary of anything that they're going to say for the most part. Yeah. So I'm very, very ready for come Monday. Every day, Sam is going to be reporting aggressively on the briefs that are stated, on the nonsense that's spewed, and amplifying the potential negative sentiments that's in that courtroom. Yeah. But like I've said, we've got the HHS report. And medical marijuana is already rescheduled to 3, which implies it has medical use. So I'm not really worried about about anything that's about to be said in this hearing.
On that note, Tom over at Marijuana Moment reported that the DEA is planning to highlight testimony on marijuana's medical benefits during the upcoming rescheduling hearing. What stands out here is the tone. The filing makes it clear that the DEA intends to put weight on the scientific and medical evidence that came out, of course, as you just said, the HHS review. So instead of this being a hearing dominated by opponents, as we know, the DEA is essentially saying, we're going to make sure the medical evidence, guess what, everybody, is front and center. And
it's interesting that they're doing this because, as we know, as far as the agenda goes, medical marijuana rescheduling is not on the docket. There is no conversation to be had around what's already happened with medical marijuana going to 3. My assumption is they're bringing this into the record, and they're going to use this to validate the argument that adult use, medical, it's the same molecule. It needs to be comprehensively rescheduled to 3, and that's really the only way forward. And the fact that it looks like they're going to do that is great. That means that we have a well-informed
100%
party on our side for once that's representing the industry and the plant's best interest and the government at the same time, which
plain and simple. They're building a clean, defensible record that supports moving cannabis to Schedule 3. And guess what? It's the U.S. government, aka the DEA. And wow, it's crazy when you think of how much time has changed in this space.
And what happens when the president wants something done?
The days of Ann Milgram are way past.
It's not hard. It's not hard to get something done in this country when the executive branch wants to get it done.
I know.
It's really not.
Yeah.
Legislatively, it's friggin' impossible.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not paying any attention to SAFE being reintroduced as of yesterday. But at the same time, like, if the executive branch wants something done, they can get it done if they want to.
Don't know if you noticed, but we're getting a lot of comments recently in the last couple of days from the prohibitionist groups on some of our videos. So yeah,
I haven't seen it. I looked last night. I didn't see any of them.
I don't want to say his name, but you know who it is. But
Mr. Sabet?
No, not him. Somebody we had on the live stream before. That's all I'll say.
Oh, Dwayne, that nutcase.
Oh, Jesus, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that guy. That guy.
I read
borderline defamed.
I read his newsletters, and it's like reading the National Enquirer back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, he called me, and I told him lose my number.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into some of the stuff. Terry Mendez, he's smiling in the background, so we'll bring him up. Today's podcast is presented by Flowhub. If you're a serious operator, you already know margins are tight, compliance is complex, and execution matters. That's exactly why so many leading dispensaries across the country, they run on Flowhub. They help give you real-time inventory visibility, built-in compliance reporting, integrated payments, and powerful analytics, all in one streamlined platform. They have no patchwork systems, no manual workarounds. So whether you're scaling from one location to 5 or managing a multi-state footprint, Flowhub helps you move faster, stay compliant, and protect your bottom line. If you're ready to operate smarter and build a more efficient retail operation, learn more and book a demo at flowhub.com right now. All right, let's bring in the man who's smiling and probably laughing amongst himself. How do you like that for an opening as we talk about some of the people commenting on our videos, Terry? But
awesome. That's awesome.
Speaking facts, CEO of Safe Harbor Financial, trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker symbol SHFS. Good to see you. How are things?
Things are going well, man. I was excited after leaving Chicago. I was excited to see what's happened the last couple of days, and just learned yesterday that the NASDAQ agreed to be amenable to Schedule 3 medical cannabis uplistings or direct listings. And so even the NASDAQ is getting in on the game of, can we attract folks onto a national exchange?
Well, you can bet they are. Score right now is 2-0 NYSE, and I'm sure that's on their radar right now. They want to even the score. But yeah, that's the thing that we heard. I heard rumors that they flinched the NASDAQ a couple of weeks ago, but now, after being in California and Chicago last week, they are very much being very aggressive to uplist more and more companies. But the sentiment that we had all this week is that, again, the Chicago event was very, very promising. I'm having a lot of people on this week to give their take that talks a little bit more than just, hey, there's a lot of great sentiment. We had Adam Stetner on from Fund Canada yesterday, and he was really asking, okay, if things are positive, what exactly does that mean, and how does that benefit your company right now? So I'll ask you the same question. Positive momentum, great feedback. You've had conversations with banks. I'm sure these banks are trying to get educated more and more in the industry. A lot of moving parts. We talk about consolidation. They want to maintain clients. So there's some moving parts here, and they're leaning on you for direction. So what is, I guess, the topic of conversations and questions that they're asking that our viewers might find interesting as we get ready for the next wave of, or I should say next chapter of this industry?
Sure. So there are two types of financial institutions today, those that serve the cannabis industry and those that don't. There are 4,000 financial institutions that are regional or credit unions, 10,000 overall in the United States, but 4,000 that are, could address the cannabis market. It's a growing industry. It's $38 billion in size. But you're now seeing a massive push towards consolidation.
Yeah.
And healthy companies getting picked up. And when a healthy company consolidates out, the acquiring company may not be at the bank that the selling company used. And so you lose that deposit base, right? While these companies start consolidating, they're asking for larger and larger loans. And as they ask for larger loans, a few subset of those banks have the ability to really, compete at a 30, 40, 50, $100 million loan level.
Yeah.
And so we're talking as an industry group about, strategies on how to maintain those deposit relationships.
Mm-hmm.
How do you put together FDIC insurance type programs for larger deposits? How to do lending and participations and syndications across credit unions and regional banks so that we could maintain the deposit base in that group and really allow for continued access across a broad spectrum. Right now, again, 100, 150 banks are banking cannabis. If everybody consolidates up, it'll wind up being 5. And if it becomes 5, you don't have a lot of choices, right?
Mm.
How do you stop that? Because I feel like consolidation is the natural progression of any industry, especially one that's as infantile as cannabis. And like, for instance, I commend these banks and these credit unions for taking the risk for banking these smaller cannabis businesses. But at the same time, consolidation's been inevitable. I mean, Curaleaf, obviously, we'll just use it as an example. They're probably going to be a large consolidator in this space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they bank with a large financial institution.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, how do you prepare, or how do you combat against that? Because it seems like it's almost inevitable.
Well, look, every industry has its top 3, its top 5, and then there's the SMB around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's focusing on the SMB that's around it and creating the infrastructure and the ecosystem where that SMB participant could be successful, right? And so there's still going to be a small and middle market even after consolidation, and it's in that small and middle market. And it's even in that small and middle market. You think about an auto dealer like a Ford or a GM. They use the outfitters to create all the different parts of the car, and then they consolidate, right? Mm. That's your small and middle market. But those small and middle market companies also will get bigger, and they will grow. And as they get bigger and they grow, they're going to need capabilities. And the question is, can we evolve and create those capabilities within that 4,000 regional bank platform? And then you have folks out there saying, hey, we're now Schedule 3 for medical, maybe Schedule 3 for adult in a couple of weeks. We might have been sitting on the sidelines previously and not banking cannabis, but we want to bank cannabis now. How do we do that profitably? And I tell people, like every cannabis company I've ever met, everyone has great weed and every financial institution has great customer service. So that's not going to differentiate why I should switch to your bank. You have to be able to make loans. You have to have an ability to talk the cannabis industry, and just showing up to one day and putting the placard out and say, we accept deposits doesn't necessarily, do the trick. It's not if you build it, they will come anymore. It's not Field of Dreams anymore.
What do you think they have to do to differentiate? Like you said, provide loans. I'm sure there's other stuff beyond that.
Well, I talk a lot about Safe Harbor or Safe Harbor Inside or powered by Safe Harbor because we have folks that have been in this industry over a decade. 60-70% of our team has worked within operators. Yeah. And when someone calls our folks, it's a more enhanced conversation than perhaps, a general banker who just moves money around. And so, and the ability to promote financial health. We acquired 420 IT and the professional services teams behind that so that we can help people be more successful. And so when you go beyond banking is no longer individual wealth management. It's how do I help keep your company healthy? How do I bank your employees? For example, you now have a list of all the employees registered with the DEA for all the folks that registered. How do I protect those employees and their mortgages and their auto loans and their bank accounts?
Good questions.
With their benefits, by the way, all of your vendors were on that list, right? So all those vendors. So if you're a law firm and 10% of your practice is cannabis and your client just registered, you're now on that list. You need a bank account that's cannabis friendly.
So you're looking at this right now, and I guess these banks are becoming very interested, almost aggressive in a way because they don't want to miss out. But still, this is a very complicated process on how this all works. And like anything, try explaining what the cannabis industry is for somebody that just starts investing into the company. What is 280E? Oh, there's no interstate commerce. What? It's Schedule 1 on the federal level, but it's legalized in a state level. Like, it's very complicated. I would assume it's the same thing as far as the education piece with a lot of the banks that you're speaking to, or are they up to speed on a lot of this stuff?
Well, it's not hard to get up to speed. So getting up to speed is from a banking perspective because they live it every day. You have anti-money laundering and bank secrecy act, but the layer that is added is the enhanced due diligence.
Yeah.
And the enhanced due diligence requiring banks, for example, to make sure that all the weed that goes through a dispensary came through a regulated channel, metric, BioTrack, something like that, right? Or that, you're not selling children's toys next to cannabis. That's a challenge that banks normally don't take on, which is the infrastructure that a bank has to build in order to you take a cannabis deposit. It's also very different when I'm here in Colorado. The rules in Colorado Springs is different than Denver, is different than Fort Collins, right? So all within the same state, you can have 7, 8, 9, 10 different rule sets by jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And so now you need systems that allow you to know that you're operating compliantly in each of those systems. And again, they put the responsibility on the banks. Banks are not normally in the business of making sure you're ethical and you're licensed. You do it once and you kind of forget about it. In the cannabis industry, they're doing that constantly.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that there was that level of granularity. So on the banks, let's say risk assessment, they actually need to confirm with regular frequency that, let's say, a cannabis producer is procuring all of their product from within like the metric system or
100%.
within the state.
So we do SKU analysis, for example, for our bank partners, and we'll go through all the SKUs that are in a particular dispensary and match it up to what your metric and BioTrack systems. And by the way, if you're selling Tonka trucks and that's a SKU that comes up, we might tell you might lose your bank account. You can't sell children's toys next to cannabis products.
Okay. And if, let's say, January of next year, banks throughout the gamut from bulge bracket down to the single location local banks are like, we'll bank cannabis. Which end of that spectrum do you think is going to win the business of the cannabis industry? Because I'm assuming some people are going to have the perspective of, well, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, they debanked me a couple of years ago. Why am I going to give them my business now? I'd rather go to the local bank or the local credit union, despite what they could potentially offer.
Yeah, I would say highly unlikely that the massive banks out there will accept cannabis deposits. They don't accept other high-risk areas. For example, one of my other businesses, I teach people how to be travel agents. And most national banks won't touch that because of the money laundering associated with travel agencies.
Really?
So
Wow.
It's hard to get a bank account, So, when you're a large bank and you're protecting $1 trillion balance sheet, the high risk areas are why bother? Am I going to make enough money in that high risk area? And think about the $1 trillion industries that JP Morgan supports. Why would I take in an industry less than $100 billion?
Got it.
Right. And so I don't think that they jump in. They might, jump in some ways. If Monsanto buys a cannabis company, they're not going to kick Monsanto off their platform, so they're going to jump in some ways, but they're not necessarily going to jump in directly with the, single state operator or even multi-state operator per se, unless things change dramatically. Safe banking, what we rely on today is interesting. Yep. It's a letter. It's a 2014 FinCEN letter that basically says we're allowed to bank cannabis and they won't pull our charter if we do this. That letter can go away. It survived a couple of administrations, but it can go away with the stroke of a pen. And cannabis banking goes back to pre-2015.
Yeah.
And so safer banking makes that more secure. What that does is opens up the world of people that are sitting on the sidelines saying, I'm not willing to spend the money to take the risk to support an industry that the banking industry doesn't necessarily support ourselves, or maybe has, in some folks' opinion, you'll see it in the legal hearings that are happening. In some folks' opinion, could cause harm to the community. And community banks and regional banks and credit unions are all about the community.
How much do banks consider alcohol or tobacco or firearms high risk as well in terms of banking those industries?
They're all high risk industry. Yes,
they're all high risk.
They're all high risk industries.
Got it.
How about sports betting as well?
Well, I mean, if you apply for any LLC in the United States, one of the questions when applying for it is, will this business be associated with gambling? They isolate that over anything else. Gambling and mature pornography and all those other things come into the fold within those high risk chargeback industries. I was just curious about tobacco and alcohol because those seem pretty steady in terms of like a CPG, but I'm assuming it's also high risk as well because of the substance.
Remember, tobacco and alcohol programs from a banking perspective are 70 years old.
Yeah.
They know how to do it. They've run it well, etc. So even though they're taking on incremental potential risk, the programs that sit behind them, highly automated, highly efficient.
70 years in the making.
70 years, yeah, exactly.
When I think about this, though, it's just like if medical cannabis is Schedule 3, and I'm just saying worst case scenario, adult use is not, this would turn into an absolute nightmare in how to track all this, would it not, Terry?
Yeah, I'm working with some of the law firms to pull that together. I don't tell the people this often, but I am a CPA and I'm in 3 states and I know this stuff really well. And, you need something called a tax opinion. And the tax opinion is going to say how you allocate costs between your adult and medical program. And then you have to structure your business behind that tax opinion, your financials, so that you're tracking your costs and your revenues appropriately so that you can file the right, reports, your financial reports and your tax returns. And so all of that stuff is working together. It becomes complex. And so here's an industry that's driven by QuickBooks, and now we're going from QuickBooks to complexity, where you're going to have divisions and subdivisions that are handled differently, and having to report potentially either, if you're on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, 45 days, 90 days after you issue, the quarter closes, you have to report. And the systems are going to have to change. The processes are going to have to change. And, there's real liability. Sarbanes-Oxley and other types of laws out there put liability on the CEO for not telling the truth in those documents.
Yeah. You're about to get real busy then.
I hope so. Let's do this.
I just think now is the most important time as the industry starts to graduate. You can start to see some of the lenders in the space for quite some time. Like that's where a lot of people are going to lean for your expertise and experience on a lot of this stuff. And I think these are some of the stories within the lines that, we've talked with the Chicago Atlantics, we've talked with a number of companies. And when this day does come, the messaging has been consistent. Our day-to-day is only going to get even busier because as the traditional banks start to get more and more involved, they're going to lean to players like yourselves for like education and what next steps. So timing's everything, right?
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I got into this industry. I was a .com kid, programmer and all that stuff back in the 90s, and I missed that wave because I stuck to my Arthur Andersen job, thinking I needed this job more than I needed to jump to DoubleClick or Yahoo or Media something or other.
Yeah.
Cannabis was the same wave. Here's an industry that's small, growing rapidly, 11% CAGR over the last 5 years, and you see this and you say, man, there's not a lot of folks that know and what a professional Fortune 500 company should look like and what good looks like and how to navigate those hallways and what does it mean to be a division of a public company or an executive within a public company. I know those things well. There's some folks that do know those things well, and hopefully we do become very busy.
Yeah. All promising signs, but I think most part, and it's encouraging, is that the sentiment in Chicago was very, very promising for a whole lot of variety of reasons for every single company that was there. But positive momentum moving forward, and that's a good.
Yeah, look, in my mind, what did I see? Regulatory change is accelerating. We talked about a bunch of it. Consolidation is happening. Free cash flows and profitability matter more than revenues. Heard that over and over again. Operational excellence, things like supply chain management, distribution networks, being able to manage your economics effectively. It's no longer about just producing the best weed and having the killer brand. And so we heard a bunch of that type of information of saying we're becoming much more mature at a much more rapid pace than we expected.
Yeah. The vibe I got too is like outside of the top MSOs that obviously want to uplist right away, the medium to smaller size companies, they're taking their time and seeing how this all progresses. But have you had any dialogue with any companies about their aspirations for uplisting as well while you're there?
Tons of them. And so everybody's looking at it. They're looking at Trulieve, and now Glass House is saying, man, they might have access to cheaper capital to consolidate. There's still very limited pools of capital from a debt market available to folks.
Yeah.
And so how do I compete, or do I consolidate? And I said earlier in a different webinar, you might see some things we're not expecting. You might see some massive MSOs consolidate with each other, or private MSOs consolidating with public MSOs, and creating kind of this massive conglomerates. If you look at some of the MSOs, not all of them have, Trulieve's medical practice.
No.
Some of them are more adult than medical, but if they want to compete, how do they compete and drive up the medical side of their business? Or do you wait a few weeks? We've been burned many times waiting for regulatory change, but do you wait a few weeks and find out if you can take your whole company public?
Yeah, all good points.
There's going to be some big moves on the private side. I think you're going to see a private MSO emerge with about $600 to $700 million in free cash flow on an annualized basis here pretty soon.
I have some ideas.
Yeah, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a break.
They're private, so it doesn't matter. The beauty of being private versus a public company.
Yeah. Oh man, as we just sit here with the big grin. Listen, always good catching up with you, and glad to hear everything went well last week in Chicago. And more importantly, let's keep in touch. I know you're going to be busy over these next couple of weeks, but all eyes on Arlington, Virginia come Monday, and that'll be the focal point.
If the Knicks can win, the adult cannabis industry can win.
Exactly.
I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.
All right,
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. Yeah, just dropping bombs there, buddy.
They're private. Doesn't matter. People will find out eventually.
Yeah. But encouraging. But he was saying like travel agents. Like I didn't realize I
didn't realize that either. One of my buddies runs actually a pretty big travel agency. I didn't realize there was like crazy logistics or hoops you have to jump for banking, or I didn't realize it was big for money laundering at all. It makes sense though. I mean, you could just
wild.
I'm assuming you can funnel money into travel pretty easily.
Yeah. All right, Andrew O'Connell, who came on a couple of weeks ago, we got a lot of awesome feedback. Some of you were commenting earlier this week about yesterday.
Hold on. This guy Chris keeps showing up in the comments. We do not get paid by Glasshouse. Glasshouse don't pay us a dime to talk about them or anything involved with the show. This guy's been popping up for like the last week. Despite what you may think, that is just not true.
Huh. Yeah. Ask questions, people, before coming up with accusations. It's just a better approach. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I continue to say that. As I said, Andrew O'Connell, who was on a couple weeks ago, got a lot of great feedback. He's going to provide analysis on some of Kim Rivers' selling of her shares in this buyback that has not been implemented yet. But we're going to bring him up just a moment. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Fund Canna. If you're a licensed cannabis operator, you already know demand for cannabis isn't the problem, cash flow is. You're selling product but getting paid 30, 60, sometimes 90 days later. Meanwhile, you still have to buy inventory and run your business while waiting to get paid for what you've already produced. Most operators don't realize it, but they've become lenders to their own customers and it's holding them back. So with that, that's where Fund Canna then comes in. They provide capital built specifically for how cannabis actually operates, not how banks wish it did. So whether it's a revolving line, working capital, or the ready paid platform that lets you get paid up front while your buyers pay over time, it's all designed to keep money moving through your business and this industry. Fund Canada has approved nearly $500 million in cannabis financing, and it's funded over 5,000 transactions. And more importantly, their clients use them again and again because the capital works with their cash flow cycle, not against it. So if your business is growing but your cash flow isn't keeping you up, you don't have a demand problem, you have a capital timing problem. So if you want to learn more, log on to fundcanada.com and fix it now. Friday morning, TDR, Trade to Black, presented by Flowhub. Bring him back up again, Mr. Andrew O'Connell. He's the author of Pristine Capital Substack. Good to see you, my friend. And we're going to propose an idea. Just Chad says, can we get a members-only chat? I think this is a great idea that we have you on every single week in a members-only chat, where we can discuss some of the stock that's been moving, some of the trade patterns that are taking place, and you breaking it all down. So can you commit to that? Yes or no? Tell our audience.
We'll see. We'll see. To be determined.
Way to put him on the spot, Chad. He's never coming back.
Good to see you, my man. But listen, you were a great response and great feedback from the first appearance. But we want to talk about just everything that's been going on with Trulieve. What's it been now? 2.5 weeks since they began trading on the New York Stock Exchange?
Yeah.
June 10th. So since that happened, June 17th, Kim sold 137,535,000 shares. Total volume that day was 2.24 million. Her sales represented what 61% of all shares traded. Then on the 18th, she sold it at roughly over 138,000 shares. Total volume was 3.22 million. That represented a 4.3% of the day's volume. And then earlier, was it this week on the 22nd, she sold roughly around 206,000 shares. Total volume 4.06 million. That was 5%. This buyback has not begun yet, but you wanted to break down, I guess, some of the analysis. So let's begin with that. What should investors be paying attention to? How should they be interpreting this? And let's walk before we run with this, because there's a lot of people from an optics standpoint are discouraged. So let's break this down and what it all means.
Yeah, so this was part of a 10b5-1 program. And that program is designed to give executives a safe harbor to sell shares without being accused of insider trading.
Yep.
So the way this works, this is nothing new. All executives do this. Elon Musk sells shares, Jensen Huang sells shares. Like, this is a very common practice. Basically, the idea with this program is, say an executive has insider information, like, oh, sales are going to be horrible this quarter, something bad happens. They can't just go and dump their shares in the market with that insider information. So there was a 90-day cool down period with this. So her sell program was actually announced in March.
Mm-hmm.
So all investors have that 90-day window to act accordingly, however they would like to. And yeah, with this sell program, she's offloading actually in 2 tranches. So she's offloading 1.7 million, and that has largely occurred over the last 7 trading sessions. There was a Form 4 that was filed last night. And this is the thing, every time one of these sell orders goes through in the market, you have 48 hours to file that Form 4 and just let the entire market know what you've done. So as of right now, she's completed 91% of the share sales for this current tranche. I would imagine the rest are going to be done today or perhaps on Monday. So for the most part, this selling program is over. And then the next one happens in September.
Okay.
Another thing that I wanted to research is just, does she still have shareholder alignment? There's been a lot of talk online like, oh, she just cashed out of her whole position. Like, she's done with the company.
Not even close.
Not even close. So when all is said and done, she's still going to have a 9% ownership stake of Trulieve, which is crazy. Which is comparable to all founder-led companies. There's actually companies in the S&P 500 that are not founder-led, where the CEO owns less than 1% of the company.
Think about that. What's that what translate into 9%? How many shares is that? Do we know?
It's a lot. It's roughly $150 million probably worth of stock.
So put that into perspective.
But Andrew, one question that I do have, I'm sure a lot of people are curious on, with this 10b5 program, is there discretion in selling the shares? Like, for instance, can she make the decision that, well, the price has gone too low, I don't want to continue the program and suspend it, or I don't want to sell shares? Or is it, well, we announced this, there was a cool off period, here's the tranche, this has to go out the door, whether we like it or not?
Yeah,
because she's selling at some relatively low prices compared to where the stock was 2.5 weeks ago. And when you're selling millions of shares, $3 a share makes a difference.
Huge.
Yes, that's a great question. The share sales are done by an executing broker. Okay. So I think this is another way to just remove liability from the executive and remove any, any nefarious things going on. So basically the executing broker does the share sales. So Kim Rivers is not even involved in that.
Got it.
The one thing that I did not anticipate is just how quickly these share sales went through the market.
Good.
So if we look at, I guess it's good where the Band-Aid was ripped off. But yeah, if you look, like, those share sales have accelerated. So the first sale was like 137,000 shares. And then it ramped all the way up to, on the 24th, there were 400,000 shares sold.
Okay. And there was roughly, I think, 2.4 million shares traded that day, or 2.2 million shares traded that day on the stock. And it might have been flat, if I remember, 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's been a substantial portion of the trading volume. Yeah. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of investors and really tactical players out there that they go, hey, I know the CEO is selling. I know that's going to be ripping through the market, and so I'm going to stay on the sidelines. And that's perhaps why we got such a big decline in the stock. The stock was down from peak to trough about 40%,
Yeah.
pretty much in a straight line over a few weeks.
Yeah,
It was interesting. You think you saw it tap 797 on Tuesday of this week, and then it rebounded. It bounced right off when it broke the $8 mark right up, which is up about 10% since then.
Looks like we're going to have to repeat some of this information because some of the info coming in is broker, yes, but timing, why rush? Do you want to explain some of that? But again, another question is why is she selling shares? But this was first submitted back in March, everyone. So again, we'll repeat that. This is nothing strategic around an uplisting, that took place on June 10th. But, when you look at broker, yes, but timing, why rush? This was just already in motions. And I'm assuming that once this is committed, there's no turning back. You have to once you file this, the process has to work itself out eventually. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah. And, in terms of optics, it certainly does not help when you've got all these big catalysts going off, like you're uplisting to the New York Stock Exchange and you're pretty much the first seller on the offer. It definitely does not help, but this is something very common. Every executive does this. And, Kim Rivers has stated it's for diversification purposes. Again, she's taking a very small stake of her total position off the table. But this is something every executive at some point has to take at least a piece off the table. And again, the best executives in the world, they all do this.
Okay.
Imagine if Trulieve wasn't uplisted and it was still on the OTC and she had this program planned. It would be extremely painful.
Yeah, and I think that's the case with this industry and this sector.
Yeah.
You've had, just dreadful liquidity in the sector and then a raging bear market for the last couple of years. So if you're an executive in the space, you really have not had the same opportunity that an executive, in the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ has had to really take any of your chips off the table.
Yeah. Here's a great angle too at Tyler Rose wrote. How do we bring new eyes to the industry? Let them buy in. Great point. Also, Gary writes, is this the volume that was happening 15 minutes after the close? The one day 5 million shares traded at the end of the day. Did you see that?
I did not see that. It's tough to tell which, where she was exactly. But yeah, you could pretty much see there was some heavy sell pressure on the tape, really from the open. And I was crunching the numbers, and pretty much every day over the last, week and a half, her share sales have made up about 5 to 7% of the total volume. So it's substantial. To be honest, when this program was announced, I thought it might happen over the course of, let's say, 2 to 3 months, and you're really just working the orders in over time to where it doesn't impact price. But that's just not the way that this one went. And I think it's really because the stock just uplisted, and I'm noticing the average daily volume, it's improving every single day. But it was pretty much the first couple days on the New York Stock Exchange, and those big orders are going through.
I would rather it be quick, to be completely honest. And I mean, I know that I've been complaining on Twitter and I've complained on this show about the price action of Trulieve. But at the same time, I mean, I just got an opportunity to buy more below 850. And if I was a betting man, I'd have to bet that share price is going to be higher than $12 come December or January of this year, minus some unforeseen thing happening in the market. So while it is painful, while it does suck, it does give us something to talk about. And it did give me a chance to buy more stock under $9. So, I mean, I'm not all that mad at the current circumstances. And you're correct. The volume day after day has been accelerating, which is what we need because no one's coming into these stocks without liquidity. That is the biggest hang up here for real money to come in.
Well, yes, there's also people out there that are capped with capital, so I'm sure they're a little frustrated. But you had mentioned, let's think about solution. The share buyback is 2.4 times the size, the number of shares that Kim Rivers is selling. So that buyback has not begun yet. So if this tranche indeed ends Monday, Tuesday, then again, what are some next steps when this buyback would then be implemented? Could we see that happen sooner rather than later?
Yeah. So first of all, this is after that 40% haircut. This is a totally different stock or a different company when you're looking at it. So after that 40% haircut, Trulieve was holding 19% of its market cap in cash on its balance sheet. So it was pretty mind-boggling stuff. But yeah, in terms of the buyback, again, like Trulieve generates so much cash that they announced their $50 million share buyback. It's 2.4 times the size of the amount of shares that Kim Rivers was selling. And that buyback is going to take place over the course of a year.
Yeah.
So if you're really of the logic where like Kim Rivers selling shares, tank the stock, now that selling pressure is coming off the stock, she's going to have a bit more to sell in September. So that's something to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
But now coming down the pike, you have this share buyback, which is going to retire about 5% of the float. So that
Okay.
could be buy pressure that's actually helping the stock moving forward.
The September tranche is only roughly 800,000 shares, isn't it? If this one is 1.7 million out of the 2.5. So, I mean, if we get things that go correct come September, I would have to assume once that tranche activates, it's just wipe out. And I would assume then they start to initiate the buyback program. I wouldn't expect them to do anything with the buyback program until she's completely out with that 2.5 million, because that would be borderline like another head scratcher if that started to happen. The best thing that they have going for them right now, despite the negative sentiment around these sales, is the fact that that buy program is waiting in the wings and it is not active currently. Because if she was selling into that, that would be a completely asinine thing to do.
So this is structured over the course of the next year. So you could probably see this buyback start to take place relatively soon. But then as well, as we said, if we have something happening in September as well, it's structured in around that time as well. But I think if we get everything we want out of Arlington, this becomes a big nothing burger. But I understand the optics in the first couple of weeks. And let's face it, it's been.
I also don't, I think, granted, she told me this, so I didn't fact check it, but I don't think she's ever sold a share out of her personal holdings of Trulieve until now. No dispositions, no selling tranches for tax purposes. I don't think Kim's ever sold a share up until this 2.5 million share program.
We've been waiting years, if not a decade, for this moment for an uplisting or a senior exchange. And when expectations aren't met, especially in today's day and age, investors are up in arms, which I get it from an optics standpoint. But this is the reason why we got to talk in depth about this and really understand what's been happening so far, but more importantly, where we're at today and what we can expect moving forward. But great to point out that this buyback has not taken place. Noah from Advisor Shares logs on. Sorry, I'm behind live here, but most of the large prints of after hours are us moving from swap to custody. Yeah. So again, important information.
You're going to see a bunch of those on a bunch of other names moving forward. I'm assuming Glasshouse will start to do that. I'm assuming when Curaleaf, Verano, TerraSend, when they all uplist, you'll see those large blocks after hours start to roll, and that's going to be converting swap to shares.
Mm-hmm. Lots of good questions here. So how do you feel about, Glasshouse as well becoming the second MSO to obviously to make the announcement? They begin trading on June 30th, but we need more companies to uplist, Andrew. But it's nice to see. I know last time we talked about the Russell 2000 and some of these companies, they'll get reviewed. And I think that's only a matter of time before they're added. I know you don't follow the psychedelic space, but Definium Therapeutics was added to the Russell 3000, which is mid-tier size companies. But all in all, it's like these plant-based medicine type stocks are starting to get their rightful attention, which is great to see.
Yeah, it's awesome. And with Glasshouse uplisting, they are just so good at telling a really compelling growth story.
Aren't they? They do a really good job. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, they've got it nailed down where their whole story is about the future of the industry and where they fit into that future, which is quite different than many of the other companies that, their story isn't quite as differentiated. So I'm very curious to see how that one does when it uplists. And yeah, assuming they don't have now the CEO is coming out and doing the same exact thing as Kim, yeah, I think this one can hopefully do a lot better.
Well, I think it's going to do a lot better. And I think the real test is going to be, what is the price action after the last week concludes after they uplist? Because Trulieve announced the uplisting, went up 60%, and then from the point of actual uplisting on the NYSE on, the price action has been to the downside, and we've seen some weakness in the stock. Glasshouse was up 16% yesterday. I think it's down a little bit today. Let's see where it is from now until the 30th, which is next Tuesday. It should uplist. So I'm curious to see the price action, but you got to believe that Cahodes, Seawolf Capital, a lot of the gentlemen that we were at dinner with in California are already making calls and are already prepared for this thing to go up to the NYSE. I know a couple of people that are in Trulieve's investor base from the beginning that are very large money guys, but they're not street guys. They don't have relationships with these large any kind of real money on the street. They're ultra high net worth individuals and guys that were involved in the license. Glasshouse's investor base is a different profile than everybody else. So I am curious to see what happens after that first week of trading. And also, let's not forget, it is trading at a premium to its current fundamentals, much, much more ahead of itself than anybody else in this sector. And those investors are going to weigh that when they decide where they want to enter.
I think we learned last week why it trades at a premium, though. All their investors own one stock, and it's Glasshouse, and it's not
family offices and guys that are sharp look at that and they're like, well, look at this sector, look at how its peers are performing. I'm not going to jump the shark right now and buy in at a premium to where this could potentially go. I mean, Glasshouse gets the unlock, and we happen to strike lightning twice, and DEA registration allows for intrastate as well as EU exports, and they can start doing that. I mean, Glasshouse goes from $1 billion valuation to probably a $4 billion valuation relatively quickly, because then it becomes insanely cheap.
Yeah.
But there's a real risk of those two things not materializing.
Well, the investor base we met last week, Andrew, extremely loyal. But to your point that you said earlier, they are phenomenal, meaning Glasshouse, at explaining where the story is going. And that's what we kept hearing over and over and over, which is why I think in some ways they do trade at a premium. So, okay, you broke down the analysis with Kim. We could see a buyback. We don't know yet as to when this will start, but the short-term setup, what does it look like for Trulieve right now?
Yeah, so for Trulieve right now, today could be the last day that those shares are being offloaded. So we'll have to see what happens. I think the thing with Trulieve is the company generates so much cash. So at this valuation where it's literally the company's holding 19% of its market cap and cash on its balance sheet, in terms of value investing, the stock looks really attractive.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of investors that are looking for growth, that is, I think, the issue, because Trulieve does not have top line sales growth. Their sales are declining, maybe like a few percentage points year over year. So I think, yeah, for right now, those value investors might be interested. And of course, those investors that are looking forward to all these awesome catalysts that could be hitting later in the year. But it's quite a different profile than a Glasshouse, which is really positioned for that growth. And the valuation is currently trading like a bunch of growth is coming in the future. And then the other thing as well is Glasshouse does not really have bag holders in the stock. Like if you look at where it's trading right now, it is trading right around where it IPO'd. So that's a huge thing. Like say if Glasshouse has a little bit of a rally, you're going to have an investor base where no one who owns the stock is losing money on it. And that's so much different than when you have an investor base where most of the investor base is underwater. So yeah, it's definitely like, it's almost like the growth stock, whereas the other companies are kind of treated as like deep value.
But Andrew, wouldn't you welcome value investors coming into the fold right now and evaluating Trulieve and then deploying capital into Trulieve? And then let's say 2-3 years later, when Georgia is coming online, potentially there's adult use in PA, there's potentially adult use in Florida. I'm sure Kim has then also acquired another MSO, and that growth profile starts to kick in, and we build a base with value investors, because I think that's probably the most attractive thing right now with the name.
Absolutely. So that's where I think the M&A really comes into play. You guys have touched on this so much.
Yeah.
But really, like when you have an industry where most of the companies in it, they're only growing top line by maybe 1% or 2%, maybe it's negative 1% or 2%. You just don't get that same excitement over the sector, because you have a bunch of companies where everyone's racing to the bottom on pricing. So yeah, this M&A angle where perhaps you acquire other companies, you acquire growth, and perhaps it helps a little bit with that pricing power as well. That I think is going to be such a big catalyst But yeah, we
Huge.
need this hearing to go well and a few dominoes to fall between now and then.
Well, the way you explain it, you're right. It's not sexy to 1% to 2%, but now you get a better understanding as why we keep talking about consolidation, because growth is going to be a huge driver, especially if you're talking to bigger institutions. But listen, a couple of people comment, I'm speaking too much here. I'm going to let you speak a little bit more, but how are you seeing this? How are you planning? How are you preparing for the next 30, 60, 90 days in the event that we get positive outcomes from this ALJ hearing? Because I think that's the big thing that a lot of investors want to know. Where can this go if everything proves to be positive?
Yeah, so I think these next couple months, like this is the Super Bowl of cannabis investing. So like I have written down a bunch of these binary events that we have coming up. So like there's the recreational rescheduling hearing. That's binary event risk. Hopefully that goes well. We have the hemp ban coming up in November, and we keep getting, different news stories coming out about that. Again, that too is binary event risk. Then FinCEN guidance may or may not come. We'll see. Again, binary events. And then now safe banking introduced. So if all of these catalysts kind of go our way, then you end up getting, a bunch more companies uplisted. The liquidity profile is so much better. M&A starts happening. The growth profile gets better. 280E is coming off. You get the profitability looking better. And then suddenly, like this whole group, it's like these are value stocks that now have growth coming in and really good profitability and cash flow. Whereas, like, you had a guest on the other day saying, I don't think the recreational rescheduling is going to go well. If that chip doesn't fall in our favor, then it's a totally different look. So I can understand why a lot of these big capital allocators, they're just going, let's just hang on a couple months. Let's start tracking this stuff and let's see how the chips fall. But I think like this is it in terms of, where this space is going.
Nothing's
I mean,
guaranteed.
that's pretty succinct. I wouldn't, if I was new to this industry and I was going to allocate meaningful capital, I wouldn't be touching this until the hearing concludes.
Yeah.
You can't. I wouldn't touch it until the hearing concludes, and I wouldn't touch it until there was Treasury guidance around the tax liabilities and the UTPs. Those two things fall in our favor. I would deploy meaningful chips into this sector from a value standpoint, because Trulieve will be flashing bright lights all over the place if those two things fall. And she'll reconsolidate. Kim will reconsolidate those businesses right away if the hearing goes in our favor.
Well, I think anything, you're looking at the psychedelic space, $700 million raised this week for Definium. Like the institutions are already in there, and that's what's coming in the space if everything proves to be positive. But you outlined some, well, I don't want to say,
I don't agree with that.
Well, you don't think at those levels?
No. I think it could, but I mean, the psychedelic industry is completely different in terms of growth. You're talking talking large scale pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I get it.
With massive margins.
Look, I'm not saying
insurance coverage.
I'm not saying 700 million, but I'm saying institutions are writing checks, and that potentially could happen. And I think it will happen if everything proves to be positive in the cannabis space. So we'll see how it goes. But outside of that, you brought up some major catalysts over these next 6 months, Andrew. At the back end of 26 could be promising. What companies are you looking at?
So I think for me, Green Thumb is just insane because it has the same value profile that Trulieve has, where it's sitting with about 20% of its market cap and cash on its balance sheet, which is just insane. Most companies really have like 1% of their market cap in cash on their balance sheet. And then Green Thumb also has top line growth.
Yeah.
And then the EPS on Green Thumb is there as well. So yeah, I think there's just a few of these companies that are absolute gems, but we just need this unlock of some of these catalysts. So yeah, I'm fully positioned in this group. I did some buying of the dip into these share sales by Kim Rivers of Trulieve. And yeah, the crazy thing is this entire sector, if you look at where it's traded, there's been so many ups and downs, but we are trading like at today's levels, we are back where we were last August when the headline first dropped that Trump was going to be doing the executive order potentially in a few weeks.
Yeah,
we have not moved anywhere since that. So it's been pretty much a full year of consolidation in the sector. And I really believe it's going to make its true directional move in the next 6 months when a lot of this gets wrapped up. So for me,
so
it's
you're
really
buying
staying in touch.
individual names. You're buying individual names now versus just the ETF.
I've been mostly focused on the MSOS ETF, but what is pretty interesting is with Glasshouse uplisting,
Yep.
Glasshouse is only like a 9% weight in the MSOS, whereas like Trulieve uplisting, Trulieve was such a high weight in the MSOS that it was like, oh, okay, I already have a lot of exposure to this company. Glasshouse is a little bit different because if you want to overweight it and you're in fully in MSOS, there's actually like a trade to be made or a reallocation. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But right now I'm fully invested in the space. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. All promising. Really appreciate you coming on and the way you describe things and explain things. But MSOS is still your main baby right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, because I like how you get a little bit of exposure to everything. The companies with the biggest market cap, for the most part, are the highest weights. So, like, one thing I really don't want to do is like, I'm going to go all in on one stock, and then that stock ends up being like the laggard of the group. I think the whole sector should get a nice tailwind if these catalysts go our way. That's my bet.
Yeah, it's hard to build a strategy in cannabis because you never know what's going to do what. I mean, my strategy was hopefully Trulieve went up a couple bucks on the uplist, GTI lagged, sell Trulieve, book the gain, then roll everything into GTI and just wait for the hearing to complete. And that went completely sideways due to the obvious action on the NYSE.
All right, so you've got MSOS as your top. Can Andrew give us his thoughts on the top 5? Who are your top 5? Is that what you're asking, DeFinney? I think you pretty much already indicated. It's probably Trulieve, GTI, Curaleaf, Verano, and is Cresco belong in
Glasshouse,
that?
definitely.
Glasshouse. Sorry, my apologies. Glasshouse. That is so interesting, though. There's no bag holders. Really good insight and angle because everybody's going to be in the money. Therefore, they're in for the long term. And they've done an incredible job. But I think every single company should do what they did last week, which is host an investor day. That is so helpful. I cannot emphasize enough just being there and seeing the response. That is how you win people over. But you got to execute as well. But all in all, as we start to heat up, look to have a lot more consistent appearances with you on the show. So if you're available, we'd love to have you if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, always appreciate it. And again, I think you got a lot of talent as far as the way you explain things and break it down. I think that's the value that really provides to a lot of our viewers. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Take care, guys.
Take care. I love his angles. Very, very good. So I think probably the next steps, what we'll do is once we start to see a lot more price movement and, as things start to mature and develop over these next, few weeks and months, we start really looking at some of the stuff that we do on a weekly basis as far as like some of the chart action that has taken place for the week, and we'll dive more into that. But I hope everybody got some good value from what Andrew was just pointing out about what to really process on where Trulieve is right now and Kim selling her shares. And when you look at it from a broad picture, like put things into perspective. But this first tranche looks to be it'll be done by early next week. And then this buyback is structured over the course of the next 12 months. So all in all, I get it from an optics standpoint if people are frustrated, but we're okay. All right. All eyes on Arlington come Monday. I think that's it for now. Anything you want to add?
And then we'll be going up to Arlington with Jushi.
We will
in,
be
2 weeks
Monday,
after the hearing.
Monday, June 13th. So we'll be there filming. We don't know whether we're going to have a live stream on that Monday, but if we do, and Stacy Rush.
Oh, the hearing will actually still be going on.
I know. That's what I'm talking about. Might have to cruise over there. Stacy Rush.
Probably should for the last day of the hearing.
Probably not a bad idea. Probably not a bad idea. But I keep saying her name, Stacy Rush. She works with Jushi and her brand. She is Real Housewives of what again? Sorry.
Potomac.
Big following. She's going to be on the live stream with us when we're there in Virginia. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we do this once a month where we take Trade to Black on the road, the road show. Should we get Cadillac or somebody like that to sponsor that road show?
I'd rather get like Porsche over Cadillac, but yeah.
Could you drive in a car with me across the country, or would that be taxing on you mentally?
That'd be real taxing. We'd have to have our separate cars. It'd be funner. It'd be better to drive.
He's just so happy all the time, isn't he, everyone?
All the time.
So happy.
Dealing with a
All right.
little Bin Laden right now running around my house.
Interesting. Well, stay cool. What is it? 103 degrees of humidity right now, Fort Lauderdale?
It is. Yeah. I get to go sit at the passport office for the next 2 hours.
Oh, for the little one.
Yep. We're taking her to Whistler.
And you have to like get the picture where she can't smile. It's got to be
I don't
straight.
know. I don't think she has to have a straight face, but holding her up while they're taking a picture, I'm pretty interested to do.
We were in for a good 90 minutes when my daughter was like 6 months old, 8 months old, when we took her down to Fort Lauderdale. Shad should go to the hearing and show off that stiff arm. Everybody liked that stiff arm that I had. The guy walked right in front of Boris and I, but got some feedback on that one. But yeah, I wasn't too happy. Like, come on, Captain Obvious. Do you not see what we're trying to do here? All right, I got to run. My wife's calling me, and I've got places to go here this afternoon. But anyway, thanks for logging on here today. I got a 280E in uplisting and what Trulieve and Glasshouse's uplisting means for other companies in the sector, what that'll look timeline-wise. It's not just as easy and turnkey as what most people think. But yeah, is it going to happen? Of course, but things to watch for. That'll come out Saturday and on Monday morning as well. And then our weekly recap. Anthony had some great takeaways with the newsletter this week, so that'll come out Sunday afternoon around 4 o'clock. So lots of content throughout the week as we gear up for Monday. The ALJ hearing gets underway. So everybody get prepared, lock in, get your rest, because beginning on Monday, big moment for the space. So enjoy your weekend. We'll see you back here Monday, 4 o'clock for the live stream. TDR's Traded Black presented by Flowhub. AB, have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names in the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.